Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Estonian Business School's Satellite Podcast. My name is Andres Karjus, and today we're discussing the recently published book, Generative AI in Higher Education, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Right, so I am here with Kätlin, Riina, and Ernesto, and today we're discussing the book Generative AI in Higher Education, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So maybe a quick introduction of our guests. We have a very professorial guest line here. So we have Kätlin Pulk, who is an associate professor of organization theory and organization studies. Her research focuses on time and temporality in organizations and how they are connected to various organizational phenomena, for example, organizational change, outsourcing, backsourcing, innovation, and so on, more or less, I think. We have Riina Koris, who is also an associate professor here at EBS, and she is interested in higher education in a broad sense. And also the purpose of business education in particular. She studies students of business and management. She has also been awarded several times as the Mentor of the Year and Lecturer of the Year at EBS. So she is very much involved in teaching and very good at it. And then we have a guest, Ernesto Tavoletti, who is also an associate professor of international management, international marketing, and international business strategy at the University of Macerata in Italy. Ernesto is interested in management and innovation in higher education and is a prominent scholar in the area with a large number of publications and also international awards for them. Right, so today we are discussing the book. And I guess first of all, maybe a question to the editors. How did you come about this idea of making putting together this volume, and how are you satisfied with the process so far?
Maybe I will start then. I think I initiated the idea one evening as we were driving home with Kätlin. I sometimes pick her up and drop her off. So I was doing my previous edited volumes introduction, and in it I had a section where I was talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of editing such volumes. And then as we were driving home, it occurred to me, somehow it clicked with a very topical theme in our today's work, working with students, the use of AI, generative AI, the trouble we have, the beauty and not such beautiful things. And then I suggested that I think it would be an interesting volume to collect all these goods and bads and uglies of the exercise, so to say, and have them in one book. And that's basically how I remember it, Kätlin.
I remember it a bit differently.
Right, go ahead.
As you know, memory is tricky. I remember very well Riina's previous book launch, and I remember very clearly when she said that never ever again. And basically, starting or based on that little phrase, I was a little bit teasing her, you know, what about? But the next or the following story could actually help that we were driving back home and then why not to use this bad, good, ugly in the title. You know, we didn't know at that time that some people have actually written something, you know, using the title because this really came from this Riina's book launch when she said that never, ever again. And here we are.
I think there's also a Western movie with
that title. Yeah, the classic, yes. But actually what I discovered basically just now was that there is a paper which was published in 2023, the heading of which is Chatbots and AI in Education, Tools, the Good, the Bad and the Ugly.
but that's not part of this.
Absolutely not.
No.
Okay, so great minds think alike.
Yeah, apparently so.
So maybe also really quickly, how did you end up choosing the authors of these chapters, or picking the kind of themes and inviting people?
Basically, we were tracking who is doing what and who is publishing on what, and we used direct kind of calls. We used LinkedIn call as well. We used Academy of Management call, and it was kind of targeted calls that not just randomly invite people but people who can actually say something, and especially as we had this 3-part structure in mind, we wanted to add or have authors on all 3 parts. So it's kind of a little bit nudging, please, can you be either that or that side? Because we had several proposals which were somewhere in the middle, but kind of one or the other or the third place, so to say.
Great. So Ernesto, what's your impressions of the book? You told me you have gone through it already.
Yes, I've been reading the book in the last 10 days or so, and it has been very interesting to read. I think it is actually a very timely book that will get the attention of people working in AI in higher education. And I have to say it is actually very well structured, and also the idea of the title is actually a very good idea from a marketing point of view. And so I have actually appreciation for both the structure and the title, and also the contents of all the chapters. I have to say that there is not a single chapter that I would consider not useful, or maybe that was actually boring to me. But I think they are very well chosen, and it is very well organized. It is not always the case when you have actually a book that is actually collecting contribution from different people, from different traditions, different universities. But on the opposite, I have to say that the editors were able to organize this in a very positive way. Even if I have to say that while the title is catching from a marketing point of view, actually, there is not so much about the bad and the ugly, I would say, after reading the book. Because even if you read the part about the bad and the ugly, I would say that all the authors are actually providing suggestions and guidelines in order to use AI in a positive way in education. So I have to say what is coming out of the book in its entirety is a positive view about generative AI in education. Even if on the title it might seem that actually it is a sort of balance and with an approach that is sort of very prudent in relation to AI in education, but it is not. I think that actually the image is actually very positive in the end, in the medium and long run, and I agree with this view. There are other sides of the human interactions where actually AI might not have a very positive impact. And one of them, I think, is actually security and war. But actually, as far as education is concerned, I think that in academia, both students and scholars, now it is a time of confusion. And especially the last chapter is actually suggesting us there is a lot of anxiety. We don't know what to do, how to move around. But I am pretty certain that in the medium run, not even in the long run, we will find a way to use AI in education that will be effective for all of us, as it was for other technical innovation. There is one chapter that is quoting the invention of glasses, even. And so I think that we will have a positive impact. And so, yes, what is coming from the book is actually a positive way forward for generative AI in education, despite the title might suggest something different.
Yeah, I agree. I think the people are quite optimistic, and the book intro is also, I read it as quite optimistic. But it's been a while now since you started putting together the volume, and then people started writing their drafts. And both of you also teach. So there's a bit of time that has passed. How do you feel? Have some of these promises already realized, or do you think some of these things that people were talking about in these chapters have already been proven maybe a little bit too optimistic, perhaps? And what's your impression so far?
Go ahead.
Andres, I'm afraid I need you to specify a little bit. So the promises made in the book? Or?
Yeah, so people are talking about saving time and various positive aspects of using these generative AI tools in education, which is kind of like an optimistic way to see the future.
Okay.
But you also teach.
Yes.
So how do you feel like, is that the case? Is mostly a good thing?
I think the problem or the good thing is that, I don't know if it's a good thing, but the thing is that it's there and it is probably there to stay. And we really need to figure out what to do with it. And maybe most importantly, how to use it and when to use it. Maybe not to be over-reliant on it. Students are very eager to use it because it makes their life easier. It speeds up a lot of things, but what they often don't realize perhaps is, and what I wouldn't have realized either when I was a student, was that you should somehow treat it a bit more carefully than uncritically, so to say. So you should also think about perhaps what it is that you're missing out. You should perhaps think about is everything that I'm getting really, I don't know, how things stand, or how do I verify something? And so it's a very convenient tool to use, just to use it without thinking a lot about it. So students tend to take a lot for granted, and but it's not always gold that comes, so to say. But if you ask whether anything has changed, so I'm not sure really. I think more rules have been established by different institutions, like educational institutions, and by journals also. So you need to say how you used it and when you used it and so on and so forth. But so maybe some nitty-gritty things have happened and taken place, but I think the overall, a general scene in terms of its use is still rather similar as when we started with this book.
By the way, how is it at the university? At your university, in the meanwhile, have more rules been established? Do you feel it's a little bit clearer now? This is something also I've been a little bit involved here, trying to put some rules on paper for both students and staff.
So you're speaking about my university,
yes,
the University of Macerata. As far as I know, the University of Macerata does not yet have a policy about AI, but I can see. First of all, my research in AI has been mainly based due to my taking part in a large project that is actually called X-Culture, that is embedded in the International Business Academy. And actually we have a majority of US university inside the projects. And I can see that especially in the Anglo-Saxon world, there is actually very much a push, and it is also described in the book in some chapters, about providing guidelines. That is very much in the Anglo-Saxon culture to have a sort of rules written in black and white about almost anything. In Italy, we tend to have more a flexible and free approach to this, so we do not have yet so many rules about the use of AI, but I can see that there is a run in that sense. And X-Culture is actually a project that has a very good lab in that sense, because we have university from every continent and people have to work on the same project, so we can see the clash of culture between, for example, what is coming from the US, what is coming from Europe, so the different actually approaches. So yes, a lot of rules are coming out about the use of AI in order to fight cheating that actually it's the main concern of professors about avoiding cheating. And I have been working myself on this on the research side, but I don't want to move a discussion on my research actually on cheating. But actually, I do not think that the most interesting part of AI in education is about actually the rules that we should actually introduce, because AI is actually changing all the time, the culture is changing all the time, so having actually fixed rules, it is actually not a good way forward. Especially because actually AI is used in very different way in different disciplines. For example, chapter 13, the last one about the ugly, is actually very interesting in that sense, suggesting actually that we should have different approaches in different disciplines. So I would be careful about introducing too much rules. We should have some rules, but they should be very flexible and be just on the principles that, of course, are in respecting the copyright, in respecting the ideas of others, citing the idea and of other people. But actually, I would not be very much. I would not go very much in details especially at the university level. Maybe inside a discipline we might provide more, but not at the university level.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes I also feel maybe we could use more of that, I guess what you called a bit of a Mediterranean attitude up here in the north, where I vividly remember in, I guess it was spring 2023, because I am part of a sort of a loose consortium of Estonian University AI boards. And the first thing was like, how can we make rules now? It was like the big quick question immediately. How can we detect AI usage? And I agree that this needs to be discussed, but should probably not be the focus. Speaking of time having passed and things changing fast, one critique to the book that I came across is that it's already outdated the moment it came out, which is a bane of all AI-related literature right now. So I guess you were kind of expecting this to happen. Suppose,
yes, we are also discussing that, or we're discussing that among ourselves, and then we said, okay, the publication is what it is, and it takes as long as it takes, even if we push authors or contributors to write quickly, etc., there's a certain timeline. And then one way to look at the book, although Ernesto said so nicely that it's timely and it's not outdated yet, but one way to look at it, if it's even is outdated or become outdated very soon, it's the kind of the mark how we understood the issues around AI in higher education at this specific moment, which is actually at the end of 2023, at the beginning of 2024. So, and this book in a way reflects the issues which were topical at that time. So yes and no, but probably there's, some kind of, if you want, historical mark or trace, what people have wondered about or considered or concerned, etc. So, yeah.
Do you want to add something?
Just very quickly to add, perhaps, is that I agree that quite a few things in the book could be considered obsolete and outdated, but yet there are other issues also which are probably still relevant, like we're still talking about the question of ethics and when to use and how to use, and when. So these are still, I think, relevant even in 2025.
Yeah, I agree. There are like a number of bigger themes, such as ethics and what is education, what are we even doing here. But and then this other side of specific technological changes. So these models, new language models, keep coming out every month, every week almost. And I guess between the models, there's not such a huge change in these 2 years. I mean, they are getting better, obviously. But then there are some things that do seems to have changed. So when your authors were writing this book, I don't think these deep research kind of functionalities were quite mature yet or even available. And now you have, in the same chatbots that the authors discuss, you have these functionalities that not just like answer your question, but can compile a long report of 10 to 20 pages with academic citations and references based on just one short little prompt. So that does seem like a qualitative change. It's no longer just a little conversation back and forth, but they can write the literature review for you.
Yeah, but I think addressing these issues, the chapter 3 with the metaphors are quite powerful tool, because I think these metaphors are still hold very much, despite the technological development of the models themselves. But the questions or the issues, these was it 8 metaphors or 12 metaphors, kind of.
Chapter 3, maybe.
Chapter 3, yeah, and 8 metaphors. And these are exactly, you can, whatever, it's an elephant in the room or elevator, or if you think about elevator, if you use only elevator, what it means, if you need to go to the, 10th or 15th floor and you're using elevator constantly only, then probably your muscles will disappear at some point. So, which means that, yes, you will achieve this efficiency, and you can have very fast, quick outcomes or responses, but you are losing something. And doesn't matter how the models develop, or even because of that, the models develop further. These underlying issues are becoming more and more relevant, I would say, because, if you are then completely moveless, because of using elevator only, then that's one of the possible outcomes. So what are the longer term, more profound, more fundamental kind of considerations or possible outcomes of kind of interacting using that kind of technologies in higher education, which in a sense should prepare next generation of people to perform in society, etc., etc. So I think, yes, these 2 chapters, actually, both the chapter 3 with the metaphors and chapter 2 with this going back to history and kind of Herbert Dreyfus kind of fight against artificial intelligence. It's also interesting because it opens up that Dreyfus actually built his argumentation on very specific assumptions. And probably these assumptions still hold, but these modern AI models, they are using different kind of assumptions, and that's why all the kind of different set of possibilities are open. So, which in the way leads us to checking the assumptions we have, the underlying assumptions we are working on. So, if we change that, what will happen then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one thing you mentioned, muscles. This is something I've come across quite a lot. This is a common metaphor that is kind of AI educators use, or people who run AI workshops. I mean, such as myself also. They use this muscle metaphor that yes, you can use these things and they're easy, but you won't train your sort of mental muscles. So maybe to speak about the bad a little bit. What's your impression, or do you agree with these chapters that talk about how this generative AI can reduce people's creativity or capability for innovation? Is that more or less how you see things yourself?
Yes, if I can say something before about actually the book being sort of outdated as it is actually coming out. I think actually the editors are too modest here. I've been reading this week, and I have to say that yes, of course, you might have one sentences or some statements that might be updated, but actually the structure of the book is actually addressing some very fundamental problems. And so, no, I do not think it is actually outdated, because if I look at the book, for example, setting the scene, there is about actually the first one that has a very philosophical approach about actually the use of AI in chess and the importance of human interactions even in that side. This is not indeed something that is outdated. So about all the metaphors that are still actually very that are still there in setting the scene. And if I see at the section about the good, there is actually one chapter that is about constructivism in higher education. Then there is one chapter for students, that is chapter 5. Chapter 6 is for teacher. Chapter 7 is for research. So each chapter is actually addressing a fundamental issue. So yes, you might have some sentences that you might actually update, but it is a very fundamental issue. And if we look at the bet, that is actually about your question. For example, first chapter is about AI and creativity. And that is something I have been working on in my papers. We have actually been doing something similar in that sense. And again, we might discuss about the problems of AI, the limits of AI in creativity, and what we might expect in the future in terms of interaction between humans and AI for creativity. But I think the chapter is actually addressing the fundamental issue of this. So no, it is actually not outdated. And there is a very interesting paper that we have been quoting extensively in our research about, for example, the use of AI in artistic gymnastry. So in order to evaluate athletes that are actually making something artistry in their performance. Again, they've been using AI because AI has the advantage that does not have national bias, that can be there, does not get tired. It is able to make a very complex evaluation, but of course there are also some limits, and it is important that humans are actually involved in the loop. But it is actually, again, a fundamental issue that is addressed on the principles. And if I say the takeaway of that chapter about creativity, one of the takeaways is best results are where, for example, AI is actually helping human beings. So it is supposed to be a chapter about the bad of AI, but it is actually has conclusions that are very much on the positive side. If I look at chapter 9, assessment Riina sense, again, I would not consider it negative, but because it is providing a lot of principles that we can actually, and also guidelines, I would say, that are very general about what we might do in order to reform our assessment process. That means a lot of work maybe for instructors and professors, but actually might make our engagement with students sort of evolve in a positive way. So in a way, AI is pushing us to innovate in our teaching, making it more engaging, more present, not just reading a paper at the end of the term. And so again, something positive is coming actually out of it. Chapter 10, that is actually about access, bias, and privacy. That is, there are 3 issues that are actually there to stay. Or for example, chapter 11, that is about the ethical of AI, again, a very fundamental issue. But again, the message is, and even if I look at the ugly, if I don't know if you want me to go into it now, there are 2 chapters about the ugly, but it is actually, again, what is coming out is very positive. I've already been making reference to chapter 13 about the ugly advice that we receive, and one of them is anxiety. And so saying that the book is outdated when it is coming out, it is part of that anxiety that is actually there between scholars. But on the opposite, anxiety, it is on the ugly side. We do not have to have this feeling of anxiety, but on the opposite, we should actually just use AI in order to innovate the way we make our teaching, the way we interact our students, and actually it is pushing us to improve, I think, very, very much. And also, I like very much also chapter 12, that is actually on the ugly side, beyond the Friedman doctrine. I could speak hours about Friedman. I had my master degree about him, but actually, this chapter is focusing on the fact that knowledge is very much a social think. And we do not have to confuse the K of knowledge with the K of capital in a way. So again, it is a very positive book because it is saying that actually knowledge creation is very social. It is actually made by human beings. And I think AI is actually pushing us in the positive side. But sorry, I've been speaking too much.
Oh, that's okay. We're not in a hurry. So I think you
yes,
have
I
comment.
wanted to Ernesto add to what you said, something very interesting, which I actually never. I don't think, I have to admit that I never thought about it, is that even though it's the good, the bad and the ugly, every chapter somehow ends well.
Yes, there is an happy ending in every chapter.
I am now a little bit more suspicious about the well-marketed title of the book, but I wanted to say that maybe the fact that you're quite right that every chapter, all is well that ends well, like in fairy tales, maybe to an extent it shows that whether we are happy with it or we are not happy, or we are happy with some parts of the AI and unhappy with others, maybe it still shows that we have all embraced the fact that it is here to stay. So even with the bad or the ugly people or the contributors still try to find a way, they sort of take it for granted or at face value that it's not going anywhere. So let's see how we can solve the bads and the uglies then.
Finding solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ernesto, being so nice and nice review and not thinking the book is outdated. Probably one how to say, I can't say cause or one possible reason that it's not maybe outdated still is that it's not a technical book. So, and as you mentioned, the issues are covered are fundamental questions raised from the educators themselves. And this is not so directly linked to the development in technology as such, but exactly how we should do things differently, how we should teach students differently, how should we make our research differently, if we should do something differently at all. And I agree with Riina that yes, probably it shines through that everybody's kind of acknowledged that it's there, the technology is there. There is no point to fight for these windmills, but let's try to make it kind of feasible or tolerable and kind of squeeze the best out of that in the given circumstances.
Yes, if I can intervene on this, yes, I think this is something that should be communicated about the book. It is not a sort of technical book that is guiding to you to use AI, but it is actually a book that is addressing fundamental issue, and each chapter is actually going to address one of those fundamental issues. And it is, in that sense, it is actually very well organized. And again, it is positive about AI, and it is not given for granted that it should be positive. For example, I was in December at the European Academy of International Business, and there was the president of the academy, of a past president, we can make her name, Kätlin Welch, that has been publishing some of the most interesting, most well-done case studies in IB. It is one of the scholars that I have the greatest admiration, and she made a workshop about AI in qualitative studies. So people were expecting sort of instructions how to use AI in order to make qualitative studies, because you have a lot of interviews, a big amount of data. But basically, the message of all the workshop was forgetting about using AI in qualitative studies. It is not accurate, so it was an attack about what AI is. So actually, in the academia, there are many people that are extremely negative about the using of AI. But I do not agree with this approach, because actually AI might have a lot of limitations right now, but it is improving every day, and it is not difficult to imagine. We are not very far away from a sort of Blade Runner sort of society, one of the first scene of the movie, in the sense that the AI is improving all the time, and it can also be sort of embedded in some robot, in some machine. It is already there. It is maybe not on front stage, but actually we will have to confront with a much more sophisticated AI very, very, very soon. So we cannot be on the negative side and forget about AI does not exist. AI exists, and it is improving all the time. And the book is embracing the challenge, in a way addressing some important principles. So, yes.
Yeah, this is something I've come across as well. The research aspect, which is something I have written about, and I also do workshops on. And indeed, some scholars are very apprehensive or critical about using any sort of AI because it's a black box or whatever bad things about it. But yeah, I agree. There's a lot of potential here. These things can be used both for qualitative and quantitative research, but they have to be used well and following principled frameworks. There's something I actually wanted to ask about because there's something I keep hearing, and I think was also something that I came across in one of the reviews of the book, is that people refer to these models sometimes with very human terms, like the AI does something, it understands, it creates, it innovates, which sounds, you could say, it sounds like something that should be in the domain of humans, not machines. So did you kind of grapple with this, or seeing that different authors use these kind of different terms, did you try to steer authors a little bit, or like...
We recognize, or at least I recognize, but no, we didn't guide in that sense how authors should approach AI or the tool or the animated version of it or whatever. Again, it's probably just reflects how people themselves relate to that technology. Is this more animated, less animated, more kind of technological tool, or somebody to say thank you and greet in the morning? Or yeah, but no, we didn't did any editing in this term.
Do you say thank you to ChatGPT?
Actually, I do. The scary thing is that it then sends me flowers and wishes all the best for the future. Things like that, depending on what the subject is. Once it wished all the best for my students in her pursuit or whatever. So actually a bit scary. No, it's not scary. I mean, but it's funny. But yeah, I hope it's funny. I hope it will stay funny.
Well, that's another aspect of AI right now, is that it is kind of weirdly centralized, right? I mean, there's a lot of companies around the world building these models. Some are built by also public sector like universities, but mostly what people use is pretty much models from like 2 or 3 companies in the US. So whoever people are confessing their, or to whatever people are confessing their deepest fears and dreams and aspirations, it's probably either a model running in the servers of OpenAI or Google or Anthropic, pretty much, at least in the Western world. Or some people will maybe use some Chinese models as well. So how do you feel about this sort of centralization of this capacity?
Yes, I think this is actually an important issue, and I think that people using AI, especially scholars, should actually know more about how AI is actually working from a technical point of view, because there is a risk of making AI sort of anthropomorphic. And on the opposite, we should know what actually AI is actually doing. And so the metaphor that I have about what AI is and is not, especially when a student is actually using AI, it is like if you had a student in your class that when you give an assessment, this kid is a very rich kid. And at home, he has an amazing library, large as the Library of Congress, increasingly big, and not just an extremely big army, an extremely big library, but he has an army of librarians, and these librarians move at the light of speed. So when you give an assessment, is finding the solution somewhere. So it is actually jumping to the solution. So is this bad or is it this good? I mean, it is good to have an amazing library, and it is also good to have an army of librarians that go at the speed of light. It cannot be bad. But the point is we have to use all of this big library and all these librarians in order to advance even more our ability to create new knowledge and to learn. So yes, he's jumping to the solutions, but we have to train him not to jump to the solution, but actually to use this library and these librarians in order to create that knowledge that is made of social engagement, that it is addressed, for example, in chapter 12. So we have to learn how to use this technology, but the technology is not bad in itself, but it is indeed powerful. And if we use it appropriately, it will advance the progress of knowledge. I'm certain about that.
It's interesting that you brought up this example of library, because it just reminds me of the Haberman's citation, which was something like, is this really good that we have instant answer? Don't we maybe lose something in the process of looking for something, because we can find something else? We could have something specific in mind, but while looking for it, we can discover something completely different. And this is probably also something which we should keep in mind, and which students should keep in mind, that it's nice to have prompt immediate answers, but sometimes it's nice to actually take time and wander around and see what's there.
Yes, and if I can, that's why there is this assessment renaissance in chapter 9. We cannot anymore give the assessment, the kid goes home and is sending it back. It has to change. It has to be longitudinal, there has to be interaction, and so the supervisor has so you have to make a sort of path with that students, not just giving an assessment and looking for the output. So it will be, maybe we have to rethink the way we teach. And if we look at this assessment renaissance, I see a lot of work to be done by humans. So it seems to me that there is going to be a growing in demands of human beings in teaching, more than we do not need them anymore. It might be even the opposite in a sense. But the way we assess students is actually going to change very soon.
If I may add a little bit to the earlier thought about the ease of having the librarian who moves as quickly as the light or even faster. What is actually, when this happens, so students' knowledge will remain rather superficial, and they will not be able to they have a fact, they have a fact, but they don't know how it relates to what was before or what was after. It's like their knowledge will be very, very fragmented, but they cannot tie it together, so there's no sense making this doesn't build kind of a furniture of their mind where they, one knowledge relates to something else. And I don't know, Andres, you probably can tell if the AI still confabulates or hallucinates, or are we past this already?
I think we'll never. I mean, given the current technology used, which are these transformer kind of architectural neural networks, there would always be some hallucinations or calculations, because that's how the models work. They just sample the most likely next word.
Right.
They're just big autocomplete machines. Maybe another technology will come around that will be better. I mean, it is already better in the sense that many of these large language model based services like chatbots, they also incorporate other things. For example, internet search. So you get hope that if you ask something about daily news, then it will not hallucinate, but go try to do a search for you and maybe give you a better answer. But that is the thing. I noticed you touch upon this already in the introduction quite a few times, that indeed you have an army of librarians, but this army of librarians sometimes just kind of make stuff up.
Exactly.
So that is a bit of an issue, right?
Maybe it's a little bit. It's actually even to an extent dangerous that because students take it for granted that what comes is true, and then they produce complete nonsense, simply because they don't have the foundation to evaluate whether the answer that has been given is true or false, and sometimes it's hilarious, but it's also sad. I had this example with a student who was writing his final thesis.
Yes, if I can, that's why I like so much that chapter 9, assessment renaissance. For example, what they recommend to instructors. So, for example, small scale. So if you are in a university and you have a big class, this is actually not working in the world of AI. So we need small scale, small classes. That means more instructors. It has to be more supervised. There must be dialogue. So it cannot be I give the assessment, I am waiting the next day. It has to be longitudinal. It has to be real time. So you have to find the problems that is not digital, but it's in the real world. It has to be multimodal, videos, animation, text, real world. So there is a lot of work to be done by human instructors. So probably the strange thing might be that the introduction of AI in education might actually produce the opposite that we expect. We need more human beings in education in order to manage an education that is producing better human beings in a way. We cannot use anymore the traditional way, but we have to follow those students closer than it used to be.
Yeah, this is something I incidentally see, this line of thinking, I see it emerge organically over and over and over in the workshops that I've organized. So often if it's something with teachers or higher education educators, usually there's a discussion, and the discussion often goes something like this. Okay, so we have today learned how to produce materials and exercises and essay prompts using these chatbots. Now our life is so much easier. We can spend less time on preparing materials. And then they realize, well, okay, but our students are also using these things and we can't really detect them. So I guess we won't give them homework. This is a lot of what teachers are saying, like we cannot give them homework anymore. But they still want them to learn how to write somehow. And what this often ends up, where this discussion leads is, okay, I guess we need to really actually talk to them. Like to assess them, we need to change something, as you say as well. We need to talk to them more. We need to have more dialogue, more presentations, things like that. And I agree. I think that could be a good outcome of this AI revolution. But the only question that I haven't heard anybody really wanting to answer is who's going to pay for it? There's a lot of optimism, but somebody's going to need to pay for it.
And I think in addition to that, I think to the point we still think in the very traditional way of higher education and topics in higher education. But I think what's really needed for the students is actually kind of the course about the social aspects of AI. Exactly what it means if they are having interaction with technological tool like AI or chatbots or whatever. How that changes the other interactions, to be aware what's behind, because it was kind of a funny story that our colleague Kaira Põder is doing this school selection research, and people are not happy if there's some kind of automated system making the selection, but if AI is doing that, they're happy. But basically it's the same algorithm still, you just name it differently. So what is really this other part you are dealing with? And this is something I think should be added to the higher education, that people are actually educated with what they are dealing, if
so they're literate, that they know what is there. Because
not only technicalities or not kind of instrumental knowledge how to use AI, but understanding kind of what it is.
What I would also maybe like to add to what Kätlin said is that what I have seen oftentimes with my students is that they have this idealized version of how things should be, and some of them are even sort of to an extent literate about the drawbacks of using AI all the time and for everything, and especially for assignments and so on. But what I have noticed is that while they think long term, right, they often act short term. So there's always a deadline, there's always something else, there's an opportunity cost of everything, and AI is always there to help you out to an extent, at least. So there's this idealized version, and then there is the real version. Not that it helps much, but just
yes,
side note.
Yes, and I think in the book there are also a good recommendation for, in that sense, for students, because actually there is a lot of anxiety right now on instructors, and we tend to transfer this anxiety and this push also on students. So if you actually force students to have some very strict deadlines, so it is a very deadline-driven, rules-driven sort of education, not flexible at all. You put sometimes, and there is an use of AI, you put students in a situation where not cheating is sort of impossible. Because if you have other students using AI, they can be more productive, especially, you do not have to publish in a top school when you make an assessment. So using AI might actually help. And if you put those students under that sort of pressure, you are actually forcing some of them to use AI not in an appropriate way. So actually, in order to have a proper use of the AI, you also need actually to relax this atmosphere of anxiety that there is actually in education on the instructor side and on the student side. That's why the chapter 12 about the Friedman critics and this idea of social engagement not being relevant, but everything is performance oriented in corporations, but also in university. It's actually creating an environment that is indeed not positive. So maybe AI might introduce a big revolution, but in a positive way, also in thinking about productivities of scholars and of students. So I would be positive also in that sense. Your question was a little bit different. Who is actually going to pay for it? But I don't think there is really an issue on the student side or the economic limitations to AI. It is not all that expensive to access to ChatGPT or some of those. Yes, it is true that
humans are expensive.
Oh, humans are expensive. Yes, that might be the case. So there is a need of human beings, an increasing needs of human beings. So yes, probably we should actually spend more in education or higher education to keep it effective in this new world of the AI. That is probably the opposite that many people are actually expecting. So, for example, in the chapter 12, there is a discussion about if we stay in the old Friedman way of thinking, AI can actually be a tool to have less stuff, less teaching stuff. But that would be a very negative way of understanding AI, because if we go in that direction, we are not able to introduce that assessment Riina sense that we need in order to have an effective learning in AI.
I think this chapter 12 and Friedman's principles and reducing kind of prediction to reduce headcount in higher education is actually links very nicely with this chapter 2, what are the assumptions we actually have, while we are doing that kind of predictions, and what if we change these assumptions. The other assumptions which tend to be prevalent is that students are 100 or even 200% broad to AI, but recent reports actually show that they are not in every case, and in some cases they have even sued the universities if they discover that their professors are using generative AI. And I think that chapter 8 with this students' creativity was a bit of a aha moment when I was working through the chapter, that actually students were not happy. They felt bad, at first with the task it was assigned with the AI, and they kind of felt that the AI will actually undermine their creativity. So again, it's exactly how to work with this technology.
Yeah, I think the question they had, but where is me in what
exactly.
has been created? So
it's really kind of disappointment kind of.
We made an experiment in that sense. If I can jump in, I told you I was at the European Academy of International Business in December, what was at Aalto University, and we presented a paper where we made this sort of experiment. So we complained that students are cheating with AI. So we had sort of professors cheating with students. I hope they are not going to sue us for this, but basically we provided feedback for the love of research to see what was going to happen. So we provided feedback to students using AI without telling them that it was coming from AI. So we had an experiment. We had one sample with no feedback, one sample with AI feedback, one with human feedback, in order to see if there were differences. And for example, in satisfaction, students were not able to see that the feedback was actually coming from AI. So it was actually not affecting the satisfaction of students, and it didn't matter if they know or did not know that it was coming from AI. So the level of satisfaction was the same. But for example, we saw an impact on creativity and performance. So if the feedback was actually coming from AI instead of human beings, students were underperforming and less creative. But only if they knew that it was coming from AI. If they did not know that it was coming from AI, then there was no effect on performance and creativity. So what has been coming out is that if you are a professor in Indonesia or in India and you have 300 students, it is better to have an AI feedback than no feedback. But actually there is it is going to make a difference if students that know that it's coming from the AI or it is not. And this is, again, it is an empirical verification of chapter 12. Knowledge is social. So students want to know that there is a human being that is interacting, that is my professor. If they know that it is a machine, they will underperform and they will be less creative. So we had empirical evidence. It was a very large sample in this project. We have 100,000 students. We have been running the project for almost 15 years. So we were able to verify that actually knowledge is indeed a social issue, and there is actually a demand of that from the student side. If we want them to be creative, and we don't want performance to go down.
That's nice. Actually, one of the authors of the 12th chapter is our colleague Jukka Mäkinen. I think he will be very, very happy to hear that his very theoretical chapter has empirical verification. I will forward this message.
My critical view about that chapter, she was a little bit unfair with Milton Friedman, but because, for example, there is a part of this chapter that is saying that basically that way of thinking was actually putting more importance on capital than on human beings. But actually Milton Friedman was from very humble background. His mother was working in a sweatshop. So actually Milton Friedman was actually coming from a poor background. And for him, actually, workers were actually important. But we have to say that the label Milton Friedman has been associated to that sort of capital supply side economics. But actually, if we look at the contribution of the Nobel Prize, maybe the chapter is a little bit unfair to the man. Yeah.
We will also deliver this message together with the first one.
Speaking of creativity, I recall at some point reading a paper where they compared not feedback but poetry. And I think, if I recall correctly, the result was the same, that if people know that it's AI, then they're like, oh, that's a bad, that's a crappy machine poem. But if they didn't know, then they rated AI poems higher than human poems.
Yes.
Right. So try to maybe wrap this up a bit. So so you praised the book and its how it's constructed and what's in there. What do you think is one thing that the most core idea that educators should take from this book? What's the takeaway that you find most important or interesting?
As I said, I think all the chapters in the book are interesting. So I would actually recommend scholars to read the entire book. So I would not say there is a section that is actually not relevant. It is very well thought. It is not because the editors are here. My only message would actually be that we have to embrace this idea of using AI in education. And so actually, if you are one of those persons that is not looking for shortcut guidelines to use AI, but you want to address the very high, deep, fundamental issue about AI in education, this is the book for you. If you are looking for very practical, short-run things about AI in education, probably not the book for you. So I would say that there is actually a positive idea about AI in education, and it is actually addressing the very fundamental issue on the side of the students, on the side of the teachers, on the side of the researcher, then on the ethical, about bias, about access, also as deep and high as about the concept of knowledge. And for example, it is going back to my first academic publication that was many years ago. It was about higher education and high unemployment at the time. And it was actually the time I met your vice rector for research many years ago. And that article of mine was actually addressing what is actually knowledge. And I was coming from an economics background, and we tend to confuse that knowledge is like the K of capital. It is something, the more PhD, the more master degree you have, the more knowledge you have. But on the opposite, knowledge is actually something that is in a social consensus domain. So you have knowledge if you are in the right place. But in another place, your knowledge is actually nothing. So knowledge is something that is always social. So that chapter, for example, is addressing a very deep and relevant topic. So yes, my only message is go and buy and read this book.
Thanks. Well, I'm not going to make you choose between your authors who has the best ideas, but I would be curious though, if there would be a volume 2, and maybe there would be, what would you like to include in volume 2? What do you think is maybe new, that is just, was not around when these chapters were written, or something that you feel is not covered enough in this book yet?
You go ahead.
What I have thought about is not necessarily AI in high education, but education. As in Estonia, our president also called the project that starts to teach.
The AI Leap of Estonia.
Yeah, AI Leap of Estonia secondary school students or whatever.
Students. They will start the 1st of September now.
Again, our colleague Karjus is also doing this PISA research, and Estonia PISA numbers are very high, etc., etc. At the same time, and it was actually at the same week when the President Koris announced that there will be this AI leap in the secondary school, then there was an article, I can't remember by heart the author, but who says that actually Estonian pupils, secondary school students' mental health is actually doing quite bad, that 1/3 of youth have kind of suicidal thoughts or kind of self-harming whatever behaviors. And this is one aspect of this very technologically rich and kind of very rational environment. And the question is, where is the ventil? How to counterbalance these impacts of this very high technological background or context? Because recently, maybe a little bit more critical material, not necessarily towards AI, but technology. Jacques Ellul have kind of pointed out very nicely what can have the long-term consequences of technology, and exactly how to counterbalance this, how to provide ventils to the students, especially in the secondary school, when we already kind of immerse them into this very AI reality. Are they ready? Can they handle that? Exactly with what they are dealing, or is this with whom? Do they have like 8 hours chatting with AI about kind of personal issues and thinking that that's it? And then again, going back to this, it was February, the announcement of President Koris that AI will introduce to the how to say lower level education. And then there was also article that yes, finally, actually we have in the programs room for that kind of education, and why we still teach people, these ancient handicraft works. But this is actually the ventil, This is the one escape route, whatever, doing your woodwork or knitting or painting, or this is actually what people know, people need more and more if they...
Like a release.
Exactly.
Release
if
valve.
they are pushed so early to this technical reality or environment, they need something to counterbalance. So don't kind of kill it. So I think this is probably something which actually... needs to be addressed, and it can actually be very interesting material to follow and kind of to create more balanced views.
So this could be a future direction, how to relieve this pressure and
because it's also we are so old, we are still have raised up how to learn to read. We kind of very traditional way how to learn to calculate, but the small children, they already start to, learning how to read and through the AI, not through human kind of contacts, not necessarily following the heartprint. So it's a different kind of approach to the reality and how to cope with that, kind of create the readiness to cope with this kind of demands. Yeah.
I just wanted to add that to Kätlin, to second her fully and support what she's saying. I think that I have a feeling sometimes when I, just everyday life, that maybe we have become too obsessed with technology and we trust it too much. And somehow the alternative, non-technological, almost everything has become of secondary, if not tertiary, or even further of importance. But these non-technological aspects of everything, they have their own place, and they're there for a reason. So
how to stay human in the age
basically,
of AI.
yes, basically, how to still be part of the society.
That sounds like a challenge, definitely,
Absolutely.
with your volume 2.
But if I can end with a positive note,
yes, please do.
I think we do not have
we
to
come
be,
from the north.
we do not have to be negative about technology and machine. We just have to learn how to use them, because they are going to help us. And but machine have been changing human beings all the time. For example, if in this discussion here was coming a medieval scholar like Dante Alighieri coming from Italy here, those people were able to remember a book like yours by heart, because they didn't have a printed copy with them or something in the phone. So they went into a library and they had to memorize. So they had an ability to remember an amount of things things that we today are not able to do. They were also able to walk here instead of coming a plane. So we have been losing those abilities actually, and they would be extremely effective debaters because they would know a lot of things. So our minds have been changing due to the technology that we have. But would we be better here instead of having printed books or instead of having a plane to come here? So the technology is changing us, but we have to be positive and learn how to use it. It is not the end of the world. We have been here before. It is just another technology like the glasses, like the printed press that is coming, and new ones will be coming in the future, and we just have to learn how to use them. This is my thinking.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. So thank you again, Ernesto, Riina and Kätlin, for joining for the podcast, and see you again soon sometime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.